Are you creating through passion and romance? Or is your rigid structure to creativity sucking all the life out of it? Good day, mate, and how the bloody hell are you? Welcome to In the Back of My Head podcast, episode 87. It's a creative journal where I rant and rave, ramble on about creativity, whatever's in the back of my head, try and make some sense of the clutter, try and make some sense of where my head's at, try and get on the straight and narrow. And if you relate to any of it, and it helps you out in any way, bloody fantastic. When you have many creative mates, it's hard not to, nigh impossible to, not compare yourself to others and to the way that they create. And I mean like the way that they create, not the output itself, because we obviously compare ourselves to the output. We obviously compare ourselves to seeing what others are putting out there on the social media, or comparing ourselves to the greats, comparing ourselves to the final product. But we also compare ourselves heavily, at least I compare myself heavily, to the way that people create. The amount of time that they put in, the amount of energy that they put in, but also the style, the feeling that you get when you look at how they do it. When you see the behind the scenes, especially with social media, we put out all the behind the scenes and we dress it up to make it look very romantic, and it can be, often is, very romantic in the spaces that we create and the way that we present them. I feel like when you see someone creating and putting out that behind the scenes content on social media, and you see their space and it's filled with beautiful things and it looks like the stereotypical romantic creative little den that you hope to have, then there's probably a purpose behind that for them as well. They probably just created that because that inspires them, makes them feel like making stuff. But I think it also has that flip side of romanticizing their creative process when viewed from the outside. I've thought about this a lot over many years about how I work creatively, and just in general, really, how I work in comparison to other creatives. And my experience working with other creatives is very limited to a bunch of amateur, and I mean that with love, as I am one myself, amateur Melbourne artists. And there have been times when I have hung out with people who need to make music at night. Or those who get high when creating. Or those who get drunk when creating. Those who need a little lubrication. Those who need to get the vibes. And you do need to set the vibes. But I hung out with a band once that we were experimenting. We were just jamming on the idea of like it's kind of like low-key hip-hop band, and we only did one rehearsal. And for me, part of the reason was because half the time was spent just talking and smoking weed and not doing anything. And I don't enjoy smoking weed. I enjoy getting drunk. I love that. But I don't do it when I'm making stuff. Very rarely. I can have a few when performing. I can have a few when rehearsing. But when trying to actually get things flowing, when actually trying to put pen to page, rarely is there a glass of wine involved. And never is there weed involved. But that's just me. I'm not saying that that's also a bad thing either. Because they were jamming. When the music started happening, it was banging. But my brain just couldn't really handle that space. The reason this subject kind of got brought to my mind recently was because I've been listening a lot to the new Clips album, Let God Sort 'Em Out. Fucking incredible album. If you haven't listened to it yet, you absolutely bloody should, because the production is out of control. Pharrell Williams on the production. Just producing the hell out of that thing. And I watched an interview with Clips, and particularly Pusha T was saying that, and he has obviously that experience in the heights of the music industry with the biggest rappers in the world. And he was talking about hanging out with people who create at night, who pull all-nighters, who call him up and say, we're heading to the studio now, and it's 2 a.m, and they create all night and make amazing music. But he was saying that he couldn't handle it. He said come like 6 or 7 o'clock, he's tapping out. That's his day done. And it was extremely reassuring to hear. I don't know why, because I've never read a Stephen King novel, but I was watching an interview with him as well, between him and George R.R. Martin. And George R.R. Martin asked him, how the fuck do you write so goddamn much? And Stephen King said, because he treats it like a job, because he gets up early. I think he said like 5 o'clock or something like that. Between 5 and like 9 o'clock, he is always sitting at his desk writing just something. And I don't get up at 5 a.m. to do anything. But, oh how it feels good to hear very successful creatives talk about getting up early and working. Because that's how I work. That makes sense to my brain. Between 8 and like 11:30 is just like, that's the block. That's when I can actually do anything. I actually really struggle to even work after lunch. Once lunch happens, there's a good chance that my mind is elsewhere now, and I'm distracted by other things. I've looked at too many notifications. I've watched something, and I'm a bit full. It's hard to get back into the swing of things, but that early morning period, 8:30 till 11:30 is just beautiful, golden time. It's it's my time. Designated as such. And I've found that I have to be very conscious of that and intentional with that. It's a dumb anxiety to have, but it feels like you're being a bit of a stick in the mud. It feels like you're sucking all the life out of the creative process because you're treating it like this 9 to 5 kind of thing. Because you're getting up early. Sounds like you got that grind set mindset. Ugh. Are you actually being a free creative? Are you creating with soul and with passion? Are you doing it romantically, like they do in the films? But I used to. And I would speak maybe differently about this if I hadn't used to do it. Because I remember very frequently when I was younger, like early 20s, in my teenage years, working well into the night in a dark room, chiseling away at something, and I would lose my little fucking mind. And I wouldn't be very much fun to be around either. My partner at the time was definitely quite frustrated by it and annoyed by it, and rightfully so, because I was distant and I was frustrated and I was just tired. Primarily, I think I was probably just sleepy and lost in my head, and it wasn't fun to be around. I don't even know if it was fun for me, but I think it was a romanticized idea. It's like that tortured artist idea that I've spoken about, that you've obviously thought about. Everyone thinks about it, about like, oh, do I need to be tortured? Which staying up all night is not that, but I think you're playing a part, you're playing a role. You're not actually tortured, you're just playing what it looks like on the TV. You're trying to do that. But also, are you mad? Are you mad enough to be a creative? You need to be insane. You need to be an insane person to be a creative. At least the way it's portrayed so often. And man, I fucking see that. I see that shit when you hang out in more active, like, creative scenes where people gather. I'm talking like poetry scenes and stuff like this. And I feel like I meet people who are genuinely a bit mad. Lovingly, I mean that lovingly. And then there are people who are acting mad. They're just acting a bit. They're trying to act a little crazy. I think to try and trick themselves into being like, oh, now I'm a real creative because I'm off my rocker. Thinking about that a lot while watching recently the Bob Dylan biopic. What's it called? Just Bob Dylan? I can't remember. And it's good. It was a good movie. I enjoyed it. It's much like any biopic though. It's usually stuff that you already know, and it's kind of just a madness porn. You know? Kind of romanticizing all the worst traits of a creative person. Watching scenes where Bob Dylan is just writing in the middle of the night, which is a lovely idea. And again, whatever works for you, whatever time makes sense to you, that should be the time that you make stuff. So like, hey, if you need to pull an all-nighter to be creative, that's fucking excellent. I love that shit. I wish I could do it. Others wish that they could get up early and create, but they can't. Not everyone can. It's just how each brain works. But something that I really noticed in those scenes with Bob Dylan was he was creating this stuff and you were thinking to yourself, man, he's probably writing those amazing songs. He's writing all on the Watchtower. Right there, in the middle of the night. But at the same time, he's being a piece of shit to the people around him. Every time in those scenes, he was being a bit of a cunt. And those that he loved were saying to him directly, hey mate, you're being a bit of a cunt right now. And he was like, yeah, but I need to write. Which is the most selfish and arrogant thing you could possibly do. But you have to be a bit mad, you have to be a bit insane, you have to be a bit of a nutter to be a creative. I think that's why we have that obsession with biopics and bonkers celebrities, bonkers creatives, people who are a bit mad. And I think you can be eccentric. That's good. And I think that goes hand in hand with being a creative, that you have an eye for things that make you happy. You have an eye for beauty in the world, and it's a very particular eye. So yeah, the way that you set up your life might look a little bit off kilter. But that, first of all, doesn't mean you need to be a cunt about it, and second of all, doesn't mean that you need to live that lifestyle of like creating in the middle of the night and being a bit of a piece of shit to everyone. These are all I'm reaching for things. I'm making connections that might not really be there, but we certainly romanticize these ideas of the tortured artist and the madness and the way that we create. Because I think deeply we compare ourselves to the final product. We want to make great stuff. We want to make really good art. But we also want to look cool doing it. And if you don't look cool while being creative, are you actually being a creative? So on the flip side of that though, being a creative is a romantic process. It is a very romantic thing to do. And it's a big part of this, it's a big part of me like writing and recording this podcast is because I want to encourage that romance in all of my mates that want to be a creative, to really embrace that side of yourself. It can be hard depending on, I feel like, how you grew up, your friend group, and if you were around people who wanted to be creative, or if you were around people who just let you be vulnerable in any way, as a lot of that romance, a lot of that what would be deemed cringe gets beaten the fuck out of you, be it physically or mentally. And so you have to reclaim that, and it takes just years to reclaim that romance and that cringe. And I feel like if it never left you, then you've probably gone through life going, oh, something's a bit off. I don't really feel where I'm supposed to be. And that where I'm supposed to be is something that I'm trying to focus on with this room. And I feel like it's funny that I feel to be romantic and to be cringe, to be creative, to write and to create stuff is a very desperate need for me. And yet aesthetically, and I'm a visual artist a lot of the time. I make music and I make visual art. Those are my two kind of primary things. And writing words. And so I would think the visual side of me would make me want to make my space a lot more romantic and gorgeous and warm and welcoming and a bit chaotic to inspire that creative mind. But I feel like it hasn't done that very much, and now I'm trying to push myself more in that direction to create a space where I walk in and go, oh yeah, this is a place where you make stuff. I think when I was younger I wanted to go for a much more minimalist aesthetic for a lot of things, and so maybe that was what led me down the path of not actually creating an aesthetically pleasing environment for myself. But these days I'm in a different mindset, and I'm really conscious of building your workshop. And I think for me, but maybe for you as well, when you think of it as your workshop, it brings back a little bit of that romance to it. It gives it a little bit of that craftsman energy. This might be a really wank episode. By bringing as much romance into this space as possible, it gives that routine a lot of romance as well. That 8:30 to 11:30 time frame, where I feel most comfortable, where I feel myself and alive and energized. And when I get to walk into this room every day between 8:30 and 11:30 and just sit here, and when I don't feel it, I still feel like where I'm supposed to be. I can't remember where I heard this concept or theory, and I have no reference to use for this, so this could be a load of bullshit, but it always have a profound effect on the human brain, that when you walk through a doorway or a gateway, that you kind of forget everything that was before it, and you consciously switch into this space. What is this space about? And it's theorized that it's like a survival technique, that it's kind of trying to keep you present. So every time you go around a corner, you're really aware of what's going on. You need to know your surroundings. You need to switch into that mode. And if that's true or not, I definitely think it plays a nice role when creating your workshop. That if you create that space, and if you're lucky enough to have a space at that, but if you create that space that just screams at you, this is where you're supposed to be when you're creating stuff, that when you go through that doorway and you forget what you were thinking about before, and your brain automatically switches into this mode, you're gearing yourself up for potentially a lot more success. And I just mean success as in terms of feeling creative and comfortable and ready to do stuff, not the final product. I'm not talking about the final product. I'm just talking about how it feels to be in here. And the ways I've tried to do that is what you see behind me, or if you're listening, it's just sticking so much stuff on my walls. Trying to bring a bit of clutter and chaos and maximalism into this room as much as possible. Stuff, little pieces, things that I've collected, things that me and my partner have collected. Posters of gigs that we've done, coasters of beers that we've drunk, stickers of bands that we've met, train tickets, drawings that I've done, whatever goes up on the wall. And I found that it's having quite an effect on my mental state in terms of shutting the rest of the world out to a degree. There's less blank canvas in here now, I feel. sitting amongst some semblance of chaos to complement the chaos of your own head. Building the space that you want to be in, building the space that breeds creativity, finding the tools that respect your time and that actually get out of your way and help you achieve the process that you're trying to achieve. For me, finding the right note-taking apps. Currently using Obsidian, I was using Milanote, things that build mind maps, things that are a living second brain is an important part of how I've started to think and started to create stuff. Everything about this room I'm still chiseling. This is an ongoing process. Of course it's an ongoing process. It will always be a work in progress because your brain is always changing. You aren't who you were yesterday and you don't create how you did 10 years ago. It's constantly evolving, but being very thoughtful of this space, bringing as much romance into it as possible. And the final thing I've really started trying to do more is an obvious one. It's an obvious one and I'm quite annoyed at myself for how long it's taken me to start doing it, but that is turning off notifications when you are in here, when you are trying to do stuff. Shut out the world. Not just ignore notifications, that was my tactic. I was just trying to ignore them. I would see them pop up and go, yeah, I'll get to that later. Now, the notifications or the phone itself must be turned off. Email tabs are closed. I even then go ahead and put on some ambient music. This space should be one for creation. Give it that purpose. Give it that. Allow it to be that. Allow it to be what it wants to be. So there's a flip side. There's a duality. There's a contradiction. To be careful of romanticizing others' creative process. To be careful of ignoring the downsides of way other people operate, or at least the way that the downsides that it will have on your creative process. Because we all make stuff differently, we all think differently, we all operate differently. This doesn't even just go for creativity, but just how anyone is moving about, living their life, comparing yourselves to the process, not even just the final product. But do romanticize your own. Care deeply about your space and your process and find what works for your brain. And keep checking in on it because it's going to keep changing every day. Every day is different. Every week is different. Every year is drastically different. It's a living process. You're just doing as much as you can to get out of your own way. As is usually the message with these. I think that's where I'll leave it today. Just some thoughts on creative romance. I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you got something out of it. I feel like it became even more scattered at the end. I guess once I started talking about the walls, did my mind go off, get a little bamboozled. Fitting. How fitting. If you enjoy this, mate, leave a comment somewhere. I don't know where. YouTube, maybe. Or share it around or something. And maybe add something to your space. Have a look around where you're making stuff, where you're creative, and look around and think, what more could it need? Be it another pot plant, be it some more incense. Set your stuff up so it's at hand, so it's accessible. And get out your own way. And get up early, if that works for you. Only if it works for you. Catch you on the next one, mate.